They called it the darkest bargain ever struck in the Texas Hill Country. It wasn't written with charity, and it wasn't signed with hope. It was signed with desperation on a cold morning in March 1889, when Evangeline Hartwell looked into the slate-gray eyes of a man who needed an heir more than he needed a wife. The pen trembled in her hand. The nib hovered over the line ink, threatening to blot. Thornton Webb sat across the mahogany desk, fingers steepled, watching her with the patience of a spider. His office smelled of leather and tobacco and something else. Ambition, maybe, or rot. Clause 7, Miss Hartwell. His voice was oil on water. Read it aloud, if you please. Eva's throat constricted. She forced herself to look at the words, though she'd already read them 3 times. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. The bride agrees to produce a male heir within 3 years of marriage or forfeit all rights to property and return east with no compensation. And do you understand what that means? She understood. She understood that she was signing away more than her future. She was signing away her body, her choices, the very shape of her life, for the next 3 years. Across the room near the window where the weak March light barely penetrated, stood Silas Ashford. He hadn't looked at her once since she'd entered. He stood with his back to them, both hands clasped behind him, staring out at the dusty street of redemption, as if he could will himself somewhere else. He wore black, a mourning suit, she realized, for a wedding. Mr. Ashford is a fair man, Webb continued. He's offering you security, a home, protection. All he asks in return is what any man wants, legacy, legacy. Such a clean word for what they were really discussing. Eva looked down at her own hands. 23 years old, and already they looked older. Chapped from Boston's winter. Scarred from needlework done by candlelight because she couldn't afford more oil for the lamp. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. You're stronger than you know, Evie. God has a plan. If this was God's plan, he had a cruel sense of humor. You have 5 minutes to decide, Miss Hartwell. Silas's voice cut through the room like a blade. He still didn't turn. Sign or I'll pay for your return ticket tonight. No hard feelings. No hard feelings. As if this were a business transaction. As if her entire future wasn't balanced on the edge of this pen. Eva thought of Boston, the boarding house with its peeling wallpaper, and the landlady who looked at her like a problem to be solved. The employment agencies that wouldn't hire a woman alone. No references, no family. The cold that seeped through thin walls and thinner blankets. She thought of the advertisement she'd seen 2 months ago, tucked between notices for farm equipment and cattle auctions. Educated gentleman rancher seeks respectable bride. Partnership offered. Respond to S. Ashford. Redemption, Texas. Partnership. That word had been a lifeline. She'd written her letter that same night. Now, standing in this office with a contract that reduced her to a broodmare, she understood what kind of partnership he'd meant. But she also understood that the train ticket in her pocket was one way. She'd spent her last $40 getting here. Boston had nothing for her now. Her parents were dead. Their debts were paid with the sale of everything they'd owned. She had no aunts, no cousins, no friendly church ladies who might take her in. She had this pen, this contract, this stranger in black who wanted sons, but not a wife. Eva picked up the pen. The metal was cold against her fingers. She signed. Evangeline Rose Hartwell. The scratch of nib on paper sounded like a door closing. Webb smiled, showing too many teeth. Congratulations, Mrs. Ashford. Silas turned from the window. For the first time, their eyes met. His were the color of a winter storm. Cold, distant, unreadable. A faint scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a permanently stern expression that made Eva's stomach drop. He nodded once. Not to her. To Webb. Then he walked out of the office without a word. Eva stood there holding the pen, feeling the weight of what she'd just done settle into her bones like ice. Webb gathered the papers, humming softly. The ceremony is at 2 o'clock. Reverend Crane will meet you at the church. Mr. Ashford has already made the arrangements. What if I change my mind? It was a stupid question. She knew it even as the words left her mouth. Webb looked at her with something almost like pity. Then you'll be on the evening train, my dear, with nothing but the clothes on your back and winter coming. But I don't think you'll change your mind. He was right. She didn't. 3 days earlier, Evangeline had stood in a different room packing a different life into a battered trunk. Boston in early March was a study in gray. Gray sky, gray slush in the streets. Gray faces hurrying past gray buildings. Even the Charles River looked like molten lead as it churned beneath the bridges. The boarding house room was small. It had been small when she'd moved in with her parents 2 years ago, fleeing Dublin's famine and their own shrinking prospects. It felt even smaller now that she was alone. Her mother's wedding dress lay across the narrow bed, yellowed with age, but still beautiful. Hand-tatted lace at the collar, pearl buttons down the back. Eva ran her fingers over the fabric, remembering her mother's hands doing the same on the morning she'd married Eva's father. That had been a love match, poor but happy. This would be neither. Miss Hartwell. The landlady's voice was sharp as a tack through the thin door. Rent was due yesterday. Eva closed her eyes. I'll have it this afternoon, Mrs. Henshaw. That's what you said last week, and the week before. The doorknob rattled. I'm a Christian woman, but charity has its limits. Your father was a good man. God rest him, but good men don't pay bills. Eva opened the trunk and carefully folded the wedding dress inside. She wouldn't need it. Webb's letter had been specific. Courthouse ceremony, no frills. The contract mattered more than the vows. 3 days, Miss Hartwell. Then I'm renting to someone who can pay. Footsteps retreated down the hall. Eva sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out the small wooden box where she kept her father's things. His Bible, his pocket watch broken, the letter he'd written her a week before he died, when he was still lucid enough to hold a pen. My darling Evie, your mother and I are proud of the woman you've become. Strong, faithful, brave. When we are gone, do not mourn us long. Live. Choose life even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. God doesn't promise easy roads. He promises we won't walk them alone. She'd read it so many times the paper was soft as cloth. Choose life. Was that what she was doing, or was she choosing survival? Which wasn't quite the same thing. The train ticket lay on top of the dresser. One way. Redemption, Texas. Departure March 12th. Arrival March 15th. Sender S. Ashford. Enclosed $20 for expenses. $20. More money than she'd seen in months. She'd spent $5 on a decent traveling dress. Dark blue wool, simple but respectable. Another $3 on a new pair of boots because her old ones had holes in the soles. The rest she'd saved tucked into her corset where no pickpocket could find it. Eva stood and walked to the window. Below, the street was crowded with vendors and workers and women in fine dresses stepping carefully around the mud. She'd grown up in this city. She knew its rhythms, its dangers, its rare kindnesses. She knew she couldn't survive here alone. The matrimonial advertisement was still in her pocket, folded small. She took it out and read it again, though she'd memorized every word. Educated gentleman rancher, 34, seeks respectable bride of good character for partnership in Texas enterprise. Room, board, and security guaranteed. Dowry not required. Respond to S. Ashford, Redemption, Texas. She'd responded with the truth. Almost. Dear Mr. Ashford, I am Evangeline Hartwell, 23, of sound health and moral character. My father was a minister. I am educated, capable of managing a household and seeking honest work and a fresh start. I do not require romance, only respect and fair treatment. If your offer is genuine, I accept. His reply had come within 2 weeks. Terse, businesslike. Miss Hartwell, offer is genuine. Contract details to be discussed upon arrival. Train ticket enclosed. March 15th. Do not be late, S. Ashford. No poetry. No promises. Just a ticket and a deadline. Eva had taken it as a good sign. A man who didn't lie about love was better than a man who did. Now, packing her mother's dress and her father's Bible and her own small collection of books into a trunk that smelled of mildew and old hope. She wondered if she'd been naive, but naivety was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She closed the trunk, locked it, slipped the key into her pocket next to the train ticket. That afternoon, she paid Mrs. Henshaw with the last of her money, 73 cents. It wasn't enough to cover the rent, but it was something. Where will you go? The landlady's face softened slightly, seeing the trunk. You have family. I'm getting married. Oh, Mrs. Henshaw's expression shifted to something like relief. One less problem. Well, congratulations, dear. I hope he's good to you. Eva didn't answer. She hired a boy with a cart to take her trunk to the station. The train left at 4. She arrived at 3, sat on a hard wooden bench, and watched Boston disappear into the past. The journey west took 3 days. 3 days of rattling tracks and cramped seats, and the smell of coal smoke and unwashed bodies. 3 days of watching the landscape change from crowded cities to empty plains, from green to brown, from familiar to foreign. Eva sat by the window and watched America unspool like a ribbon. She saw farms and forests and rivers that looked like veins cutting through the earth. She saw towns that were barely more than a few buildings huddled together against the wind. And she saw the women. Women in bonnets hanging laundry. Women in doorways holding babies. Women bent over wash tubs and garden plots and butter churns. Working women. Tired women. Women who'd made the same bargain she was making in one form or another. The train carried mostly men. Cattlemen heading to auctions. Salesmen with cases full of goods. A few families, wide-eyed children pressed to windows, and women like her. Women traveling alone, mail-order brides, economic refugees, widows seeking second chances. No one spoke to her. That was fine. She had nothing to say. On the third day, the landscape turned harsh, rocky, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Hills rose like the spines of sleeping giants. The sky stretched wider than any sky she'd seen in Boston, and the sun beat down with a brightness that made her eyes water. Texas Hill Country. The conductor walked through the car calling out stations. Redemption next. Redemption, Texas. 5 minutes. Eva's stomach clenched. She gathered her small bag. Her trunk was in the cargo car. Someone would unload it. She smoothed her traveling dress, tucked a loose strand of auburn hair back into place, and tried to look like a woman who knew what she was doing. The train slowed. Through the window, she saw Redemption appear like a mirage. It was smaller than she'd expected. One main street dusty and wide, buildings of raw wood and stone. A saloon, a general store. A courthouse with peeling paint. A church with a crooked steeple. And people. Not many, but enough. Men in work clothes. A few women in calico dresses. Children running between buildings kicking up dust. The train shuddered to a stop. Eva stepped onto the platform and felt the heat hit her like a wall. March in Texas was nothing like March in Boston. The sun was fierce. The air smelled of sage and dust and something wild she couldn't name. She looked around, searching for Silas Ashford. She'd never seen his photograph. His letters had contained no description. She had no idea what to expect. Miss Hartwell. The voice came from behind her. Female. Firm. Eva turned. A woman stood there mid-40s wearing a simple gray dress and a no-nonsense expression. She had dark hair streaked with silver, pulled back in a tight bun. Her hands were work-worn. Her eyes were sharp. I'm Abigail Thornton. Mr. Ashford sent me to fetch you. He's at the lawyer's office with Mr. Webb. Oh, I thought he'd meet me himself. Abby's mouth tightened slightly. Not quite a smile. Not quite sympathy. Mr. Ashford doesn't do well with train stations. Too many people. Come on. Your trunk will be brought up later. She turned and walked toward a small buggy hitched to a sturdy horse. Eva followed, feeling the eyes of the town on her back. Abby climbed into the driver's seat with practiced ease. Eva settled beside her, acutely aware of how out of place she looked. Her Boston dress, her pale skin, her soft hands. Abby snapped the reins and the horse started forward. They rode through town in silence. Eva tried not to stare, but everything was so different. The buildings were low and spread out. The street was dirt, not cobblestone. Men wore guns on their hips like it was nothing. You've never been west before. It wasn't a question. No, ma'am. It shows. Abby glanced at her. You look like a ghost. Too pale, too thin. We'll fix that. I'm stronger than I look. You'd better be. Abby's voice was matter-of-fact. Mr. Ashford's ranch is 10 miles out. No neighbors. No town nearby if you need help. It's just the house, the hands, and the land. If you can't handle isolation, you should say so now. Eva thought of the boarding house, the thin walls, the constant noise of other people's lives bleeding through. I can handle isolation. Abby nodded, satisfied, then quieter. He's not a bad man, Miss Hartwell. He's just a broken one. Don't expect warmth. Don't expect conversation. He'll give you security, shelter, food. That's more than most women get. What happened to his first wife? Abby's hands tightened on the reins. That's not my story to tell. But when you meet Mr. Ashford, you'll see. He's wearing his grief like a second skin. The buggy stopped in front of a 2-story building with a sign that read, Webb and Associates Attorney at Law. Here we are. Abby set the brake. I'll wait out here. Knock when you're ready and I'll take you to the ranch. Eva climbed down her legs unsteady after 3 days on a train and 5 minutes in a buggy. She stood in front of the door, heart hammering. This was it. The moment she'd been traveling toward for 3 days. 3 years maybe if she counted all the small decisions that had led her here. She knocked. Enter. The voice was male, smooth, not Silas. Eva pushed open the door and stepped into a world that would reshape her life. Thornton Webb sat behind a large desk backlit by the window. He was handsome in a predatory way. Sharp features, calculating eyes, a smile that didn't reach past his teeth. And near the window, a figure in black. Tall, broad-shouldered, a faint scar through his left eyebrow. Utterly still. Silas Ashford. He didn't turn to look at her. Webb rose, extending a hand. Miss Hartwell, what a pleasure. Please sit. We have much to discuss. That discussion had led to the contract, to the pen in her shaking hand, to the moment she signed her name and became in all the ways that mattered property. The wedding ceremony was exactly as advertised. Brief, cold, transactional. Reverend Crane, an elderly man with kind eyes and a voice worn thin by decades of sermons, stood before them in the small church and read the vows. Silas repeated his part with the enthusiasm of a man reciting a grocery list. Eva barely heard her own voice over the pounding of her heart. I now pronounce you man and wife. No kiss. Silas turned and walked back down the aisle without waiting for her. Abby, who'd served as witness along with Webb, touched Eva's arm gently. Come on, dear. Let's get you home. Home. The word felt like a lie. The ranch appeared on the horizon just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. It was larger than Eva had imagined. The main house was 2 stories built from local stone and timber. Solid, imposing, beautiful in a severe way. Barns and outbuildings spread out behind it. Corrals held horses and cattle. In the distance, the land rolled away in waves of grass and rock. Silas rode ahead on a black horse, his figure dark against the dying light. He'd barely spoken during the ride from town. Just climbed onto his horse and expected her to follow in the wagon with Abby. Abby pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. Welcome to Ashford Ranch. Silas was already dismounting. He handed his reins to a young man who appeared from the barn, then turned to Eva. Abby will show you your room. Dinner's at 7. Don't be late. He walked into the house without helping her down from the wagon. Abby sighed. Don't take it personal. He's like this with everyone. Even his first wife. The words were out before Eva could stop them. Abby's face closed off. Especially her. Come on, let me show you inside. The interior of the house was as austere as its owner. Hardwood floors, simple furniture, no photographs, no paintings, no softness anywhere. It was clean, though, meticulously so, and well built. The kind of house that would stand for generations. Abby led her upstairs to a bedroom at the end of the hall. Large, sparsely furnished. A bed, a wardrobe, a washstand. A window that looked out over the darkening hills. "This is yours," Abby said. "Mr. Ashford's room is next door. There's a shared balcony if you need air." Eva set down her bag. "Not a shared room." "No, ma'am. Mr. Ashford will visit. When appropriate, but he sleeps in his own room. When appropriate." Such delicate language for what they both knew the contract required. "Where should I put my things?" "Wardrobe's empty. Make yourself at home. I'll bring up some water for washing. Dinner's simple tonight. Stew and bread." Abby left, closing the door softly behind her. Eva stood in the center of the room surrounded by unfamiliar walls and felt the full weight of what she'd done crash over her. She'd married a stranger, promised him children, signed away 3 years of her life, and she didn't even know what he looked like when he smiled. If he smiled. She walked to the window and looked out at the vast Texas landscape. So different from Boston, so open, so empty, so beautiful. It made her chest ache. Somewhere in the house below she heard footsteps, male voices, the sound of daily life continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Eva unpacked her trunk slowly. Her mother's wedding dress, her father's Bible, her small collection of books, a photograph of her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful. She placed the photograph on the washstand where she could see it. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and waited for dinner, for her new life, for whatever came next. She didn't have to wait long. Dinner that first night was a study in silence. The dining room was formal in the way of houses built by men who wanted to appear civilized but didn't quite know how. Long table, high-back chairs, silver candlesticks that had probably belonged to Silas's mother. Everything polished and proper and utterly devoid of warmth. Silas sat at the head. Eva took the chair to his left, uncertain where else to go. Abby served beef stew in thick ceramic bowls. Bread still warm from the oven. Coffee black enough to strip paint. Eva picked up her spoon. Her hands were steadier than she'd expected. Silas ate methodically, eyes on his plate. He didn't speak. Didn't acknowledge her presence beyond a brief nod when she'd entered the room. She tried. God help her, she tried. "The house is beautiful. Did you build it yourself?" "No." "Your father?" "Yes." "How long ago did he?" 10 years. Each answer was a door closing. Eva set down her spoon. "Mr. Ashford, we're married now. I understand this isn't a love match, but surely we can manage basic conversation." He looked up then, those winter storm eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "What would you like to talk about, Mrs. Ashford?" His voice was flat, empty of everything except a bone-deep exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical labor. I don't know. Anything. The ranch, the weather, your favorite. I don't have favorites. I have work, land, obligations. That's all you need to know. That's not a life. That's an existence. Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe? Or recognition? Yes, he said quietly. It is. He stood, leaving his stew half-finished. I'll be in the barn. Don't wait up. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Abby appeared from the kitchen, began clearing plates. She didn't look surprised. Does he always leave like that? Most nights. Abby stacked the dishes with practiced efficiency. He doesn't sleep well. Works himself to exhaustion instead. Figures if he's tired enough, the dreams won't come. What dreams? Abby paused, hands full of silverware. Her face was carefully neutral. The kind that come after you've lost everything that mattered. She disappeared into the kitchen before Eva could ask more. That night, Eva lay in the unfamiliar bed and stared at the ceiling. The mattress was good. The room was warm. Through the window, she could see stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. She should have felt grateful. Safe. She had a roof over her head. Food in her stomach. A contract that guaranteed 3 years of security. Instead, she felt like she'd locked herself in a beautiful cage. Somewhere in the house, a door opened and closed. Footsteps in the hall. Then silence. Eva waited for Silas to knock on her door, to claim his contractual rights on their wedding night. He didn't come. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Eva woke early, dressed in the simple calico work dresses Abby had laid out for her, ate breakfast alone, spent her days trying to make herself useful in a house that didn't seem to need her. Silas was a ghost. She saw him at meals sometimes, watched him ride out before dawn, come back after dark, always covered in dust and sweat and the smell of livestock and leather. He was polite, distant, treated her like a boarder he was obligated to feed. The contract sat between them like a third presence, unspoken but always there. On the 15th day, everything changed. Eva was in the kitchen helping Abby prepare bread when one of the ranch hands burst through the door. Mrs. Thornton Boss got kicked by that new stallion. He's bleeding bad. Abby's face went pale. Where? Barn. Cole's with him, but Abby was already moving, grabbing clean towels and a bottle of whiskey from the shelf. Eva followed without thinking. The barn was dim and smelled of hay and horse sweat. Silas sat on the ground against a post, one hand pressed to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark and wet. Cole, a young ranch hand with more pride than sense, hovered nearby, looking useless. Let me see. Abby knelt beside Silas, tried to pull his hand away. He resisted. It's fine. Just a graze. Silas Ashford, you are the most stubborn. Abby managed to move his hand. The gash was deep, running along his ribs. Not fatal, but bad enough. This needs stitching. I've had worse. That doesn't make it better. Abby looked at Eva. Fetch the sewing kit from the house. The one in my room. Blue tin box. Eva ran. When she returned, Abby had already cleaned the wound with whiskey. Silas sat rigid, jaw clenched, breathing shallow. You'll need to hold him still, Abby said to Eva. This is gonna hurt. I don't need holding. Silas's voice was tight. Humor me. Abby threaded the needle. Eva moved behind him, placed her hands on his shoulders. She felt him tense. I can manage alone, Mrs. Ashford. I'm sure you can. But you don't have to. Abby worked quickly. Each stitch made Silas's muscles jump beneath Eva's hands. But he didn't make a sound, just stared straight ahead, breathing through his teeth. Eva felt the heat of him through his shirt, the solid weight of muscle and bone. He was real in a way he hadn't been across the dinner table. Human, vulnerable. When Abby tied off the last stitch, Silas finally exhaled. Done. Abby sat back. Keep it clean. No heavy lifting for a week. I have work. The work will wait. Eva's voice came out sharper than intended. You're no good to this ranch if you tear open and bleed out. Silas looked at her then. Really looked. Like he was seeing her for the first time. You sound like my mother. Your mother had sense then. Something almost like a smile ghosted across his face. She did. Abby stood gathering her supplies. I'll make a poultice for evening. Eva help him to the house. I can walk. Then walk. But if you fall, I'm leaving you where you land. Eva offered her arm. Silas stared at it like it might bite, then reluctantly accepted. He leaned on her more than she'd expected, more than he probably wanted to. His weight was solid grounding. She could feel his heartbeat quick and strong despite the injury. They made it to the house in silence, up the stairs, to his room. Eva had never been inside. It was as spare as hers. Bed, chair, washstand, a shelf of books she hadn't expected. She helped him sit on the edge of the bed. Thank you. His voice was low, rough. You don't have to thank me for basic decency. Around here I do. She should have left then. Returned to her own room. Maintained the careful distance they'd established. Instead, she sat in the chair by the window. Tell me about the horse. What? The one that kicked you. Why were you working with him alone? Silas leaned back against the headboard, wincing. He's green. Needs training. No one else wanted to deal with him. So you did. Someone has to. You could have asked for help. I don't need help. Eva laughed. It came out bitter. You're bleeding through your shirt, and you don't need help. That's either courage or stupidity, and I haven't decided which. This time the smile reached his eyes. Brief, fleeting. But there. Probably stupidity. They sat in silence. Not the cold silence of the dinner table, but something else. Something almost comfortable. Outside, the sun began to set. The room filled with amber light. Why did you choose me? Eva asked. The question had been burning in her chest for weeks. From all the women who must have responded to your advertisement, why me? Silas was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then your letter. It was honest. You didn't promise to love me. Didn't make grand declarations. You said you wanted work and a fresh start. That I could give you. Most men want promises. Most men are fools. He shifted, grimaced. I don't want lies, Mrs. Ashford. I've had enough of those. From your first wife, the air in the room changed, cooled. That subject is not open for discussion. We're married. Eventually, you'll have to tell me. No, Silas said. I don't. Eva stood. Then I'll leave you to your solitude, Mr. Ashford. It seems to be what you prefer. She was at the door when his voice stopped her. Evangeline. She turned. He'd never used her first name before. I'm not good at this. People. Connection. I've forgotten how if I ever knew. But you stayed when you could have left. You helped when you didn't have to. That counts for something. It was the most he'd said to her since they'd met. I'll take what I can get, she said softly. That night, for the first time, she didn't feel quite so alone. The next morning, Eva woke with a purpose she hadn't felt since Boston. If Silas wouldn't let her into his life willingly, she'd make herself indispensable. She found Abby in the kitchen before dawn. Teach me. Abby looked up from kneading dough. Teach you what? Everything. How to run this house. How to survive here. I'm tired of being useless. Abby studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but I warn you, I'm not gentle. She wasn't lying. The first lesson was bread. Ava's hands, soft from years of needlework and gentle living, cramped and blistered within an hour. The dough fought her, refused to rise, came out of the oven dense as bricks. Again, Abby said. The second lesson was laundry. Eva hauled water from the well until her shoulders screamed, scrubbed clothes on a washboard until her knuckles bled, hung sheets in the brutal Texas sun, and learned that even April here was hotter than Boston summer. You'll toughen up, Abby said, applying salve to Eva's raw hands. Or you'll quit. Most do. I'm not most, Abby smiled. No, I don't think you are. The third lesson came on a bright morning when Silas announced Eva needed to learn to ride. Why? Eva asked. There's a wagon. Wagons break, horses don't. Out here, if you can't ride, you're as good as helpless. He brought a mare to the corral. Gentle, he said. Easy-tempered. Eva looked at the animal, which seemed approximately the size of a house, and felt her stomach drop. I've ridden before, she lied. In Boston. The look Silas gave her suggested he knew exactly what kind of riding she meant. The kind children did on ponies led in circles at church fairs. Then this should be easy. It wasn't. Eva mounted with all the grace of a sack of flour. The mare shifted beneath her, and she nearly slid off immediately. Her legs didn't seem to know how to grip. The reins tangled in her fingers. Heels down, back straight. Don't fight the horse, move with her. Easy for him to say. He sat a horse like he'd been born in the saddle. Eva tried. The mare walked. Eva bounced. Tried to compensate. Bounced harder. The world tilted, and suddenly she was sliding sideways, hitting the ground in an explosion of dust and humiliation. From the barn she heard snickering. Cole and another ranch hand watching. Silas dismounted, offered his hand. Again. I'm fine on the ground, thank you. You're not fine anywhere if you can't ride. Again. 6 times she fell. 6 times he pulled her up expressionless and made her get back on. By the 7th attempt, Eva was crying from frustration. Not openly. Just tears leaking from the corners of her eyes that she couldn't wipe away without letting go of the reins. I can't do this. You can. You're fighting yourself, not the horse. Feel her rhythm. Stop thinking. That's not how thinking works. Then stop trying to control everything. Trust the horse. Eva closed her eyes, took a breath. Let her body move with the animal instead of against it. The mare walked. Eva swayed, found the rhythm, stayed on. When she opened her eyes, they'd made it halfway around the corral. "There," Silas said. Not quite approval in his voice, but something close. "See, you just needed to stop being afraid." That evening, Eva barely made it up the stairs. Every muscle screamed. She collapsed onto her bed, fully clothed, and didn't wake until dawn. The fourth lesson was cooking for ranch hands. Abby had warned her. They're not cruel, but they're honest. If it's bad, you'll know. Eva spent all day preparing. Beef stew like the kind Abby made. Biscuits. Apple pie from the last of the preserves. She oversalted the stew. Not on purpose. Her hands shook when she added the seasoning and too much fell in. She burned the bottoms of the biscuits because she was watching the pie and forgot to check the oven. The pie came out perfect, at least. Small mercy. Dinner was served in the bunkhouse. 6 men plus Silas. Eva set the food on the long table and tried not to show her nerves. They ate in silence for a while. Eva watched their faces, saw them try to hide grimaces at the salty stew, saw Cole push a burned biscuit to the side of his plate. "It's good, ma'am," one of the older hands said, lying kindly. "You don't have to spare my feelings." Cole muttered something to the man next to him. Low, but Eva heard it. Miss Catherine's cooking was better. The room went silent. Eva felt the words like a slap. She turned and walked out before anyone could see her face crumple. In the kitchen, she scrubbed pots with vicious intensity. Tears dripped into the wash water, and she told herself it was just steam from the hot water making her eyes burn. Don't listen to Cole. Abby appeared beside her, began drying. He's young and stupid. He's right. I can't cook. I can barely ride. I'm useless here. You've been here 2 weeks. Catherine had 3 years of practice. Be patient with yourself. How can I be a partner if I can't even... Partnership isn't perfection, girl. It's showing up. And you show up every day. Later that night, Eva couldn't sleep. She stood on the small balcony outside her room, breathing the cool night air, trying to quiet the voice in her head that said she'd made a terrible mistake coming here. Voices drifted up from below. The porch. Male voices. New wife, can't cook, can't ride, can't do anything useful. What's she good for? Cole. Eva recognized his voice. She braced herself to hear Silas agree, to confirm every fear she had. Instead, Silas's voice came out cold as winter. You'll speak of Mrs. Ashford with respect, or you'll find work elsewhere. Boss, I didn't mean. I know exactly what you meant. She's learning. That's more than I can say for you. You've been here 6 months, and you still can't rope worth a damn. Should I judge you on your worst day? Silence. She's trying harder than most people I've seen. Harder than she needs to, frankly. So keep your mouth shut about what you don't understand. Clear. Yes, sir. Footsteps. The door closing. Eva stood on the balcony, hand pressed to her chest, feeling something warm and unexpected unfurl there. He defended her, without being asked, without knowing she'd heard. She went to bed that night without crying. The next morning, she knocked on Silas's door. He opened it, shirtless, hair wet from washing. The bandage on his ribs was clean, the wound healing. "Mrs. Ashford, is something wrong? May I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. Eva entered his room for the second time. It still felt like trespassing, but less so now. "I heard you, last night, what you said to Cole." Silas's jaw tightened. "You weren't supposed to." "Thank you. He was out of line. You could have agreed with him. You would have been right to." Silas walked to the window, stared out at the dawn-lit hills. "I don't agree with him. You're trying. That counts for something in my book." Eva stood in the center of the room, unsure what to do with her hands, with the feeling swelling in her chest. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she said quietly. Silas turned. "What?" Not for the contract. I don't want to be alone in that room with my thoughts." He studied her face, looking for something, maybe finding it. "All right." They sat on his bed, backs against the headboard, not touching but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. They talked about nothing important. The weather, the ranch, a book he was reading, her memories of Boston. As the sun rose, they fell asleep like that, sitting up, shoulders barely touching. Two lonely people finding comfort in proximity. When Eva woke, Silas was gone, but a blanket had been draped over her shoulders. It was the gentlest thing he'd ever done. 3 weeks after the wedding, Thornton Webb came to call. Eva was in the garden trying to coax vegetables from the stubborn Texas soil when the sound of hoofbeats made her look up. A fine carriage, black lacquered wood, pulled by matched horses that cost more than most families earned in a year. Webb stepped down impeccable in a gray suit and smiled when he saw her. "Mrs. Ashford, how lovely you look with dirt on your hands. Very rustic." Eva stood, wiping her palms on her apron. "Mr. Webb, I wasn't expecting visitors. I was in the area. Thought I'd check on my favorite newlyweds." His eyes swept over the house, the land calculating. "Where's Silas?" "Out with the cattle." "Shame. I wanted to discuss some business, land surveys, boring legal matters." "I can tell him you called. Actually, I'd prefer to speak with you." Webb walked closer. Too close. Eva held her ground. "How are you finding married life?" "Fine. Fine." Such an enthusiastic endorsement. Webb smiled, showing too many teeth. "Has Silas told you about Catherine?" Eva's heart stuttered. "Some." "Did he tell you how she died?" The question hung in the air like smoke. "An accident. Carriage crash." Webb's eyebrows rose. "Is that what he said? How convenient." "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, my dear. I'm asking questions. The same questions the sheriff had 3 years ago. Questions that were never properly answered because, well, Silas is a very wealthy man, and wealthy men don't face consequences for their mistakes." Eva felt something cold crawl down her spine. "You think Silas killed his wife?" I think Catherine was a beautiful, vibrant woman who was terrified of her husband. I think she died under suspicious circumstances. I think the investigation was closed remarkably quickly. Webb leaned in, voice dropping to a sympathetic murmur. I'm not saying he's a monster, but you should know what kind of man you've married. Get off this property. Silas's voice cracked through the air like a whip. He stood 20 feet away, dismounted from his horse rage, written in every line of his body. Webb didn't flinch. Ashford, I was just making polite conversation with your lovely wife. You were poisoning her mind with lies. Were they lies? Webb's voice was silk. Tell me, did you explain to Eva the details of Catherine's death? The questions that remain. Silas moved forward. For a moment, Eva thought he might strike Webb. His hands were clenched, shaking. Instead, he spoke with deadly calm. Leave. Now. And don't come back. Webb smoothed his coat. Violence. Always violence with you, Silas. Mrs. Ashford, if you ever need help, legal help or otherwise, my door is open. He climbed back into his carriage and rode away. The dust settled. The silence was deafening. Silas stood rigid, staring at the road. Is it true? Eva's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Was Catherine afraid of you? No. Then why would he say, because Webb is a liar and a snake, and he wants something I have? Silas finally looked at her. His eyes were bleak. But if you want to believe him, go ahead. Everyone else did. He walked away before she could respond. That night, Eva couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Webb's words circled in her head like vultures. The next morning, while Silas was out checking fence lines and Abby was in town for supplies, Eva did something she knew she shouldn't. She went into Silas's study. The room was neat, organized. Ledgers stacked precisely. A map of the ranch on the wall. Everything in its place. She didn't know what she was looking for. Evidence. Truth. Something to explain the cold knot of doubt Webb had planted in her chest. She searched the desk. Found nothing but ranch business. Bills paid. Accounts balanced. She was about to give up when she noticed the floorboard beneath the window. Slightly raised, like it had been pried up and replaced many times. Eva knelt, worked her fingers under the edge. It came up easily. Beneath it, a small wooden box. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Letters, dozens of them, tied with a faded blue ribbon. She pulled one out. The handwriting was feminine, elegant. My dearest T, I cannot continue this charade. My heart belongs to you, not the man I married. He suspects nothing but... I feel like I'm suffocating. Meet me at the creek Thursday. We'll plan our escape. All my love, Kay. Eva's stomach turned to ice. She read another. And another. All the same. Love letters between Catherine and someone identified only as T. Thornton. Catherine had been having an affair with Webb. Eva kept reading, hands shaking. The last letter, dated just days before Catherine's death, made her blood run cold. I'm afraid of him. Silas watches me constantly. I think he knows. If anything happens to me, know that I loved you. I'll find a way to leave him. I promise. Eva sat back on her heels, the letters scattered around her. Catherine had been planning to leave Silas. She'd been afraid of him. And then she died. The floor creaked behind her. Eva spun. Silas stood in the doorway. His face was unreadable. Find what you were looking for. Eva's hands were still holding the letters when Silas walked into his study. She hadn't heard him return, hadn't heard his boots on the stairs. The letters scattered around her like evidence at a crime scene. His face was stone, unreadable. Find what you were looking for. She stood, legs unsteady. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. Webb said things and I needed to know. So you broke into my desk. The floor. Even better. Silas walked to the window, hands clenched behind his back. The same posture he'd had in Webb's office the day she signed the contract. Read them all. Most. Then you know. Catherine was having an affair with Webb. She wanted to leave me. She was afraid of me. His voice was flat, dead. Anything else you'd like to confirm while you're rifling through my privacy? Silas? Get out. Please just listen. He turned then. The pain in his eyes was so raw it made her step back. What exactly do you want to hear, Evangeline, that I knew my wife was sleeping with another man, that I knew she never loved me, that every day of our marriage was a lie? I was too proud or too stupid to acknowledge. Did you hurt her? The question fell like an axe. Silas went very still. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. If you have to ask that, then we have nothing more to say to each other. He walked past her and out of the study. Eva heard his bedroom door slam. She stood among the scattered letters, feeling like she'd just destroyed something fragile and irreplaceable. Abby found her there an hour later, still on the floor, staring at Catherine's handwriting. Child, what have you done? Eva looked up. Her face was dry, but her eyes burned. I needed to know the truth. And now you do. Abby knelt with a soft grunt, began gathering the letters. Was it worth it? I don't know. Was he violent with her? Did he... Stop. Abby's voice was sharp. Before you finish that sentence, let me tell you something. I've worked in this house for 23 years. I knew Silas when he was a boy. I knew his parents. I knew Catherine. She sat back, letters in her lap. Silas Ashford is many things. Cold, distant, damaged. But he's not a killer. And he sure as hell wasn't violent with Catherine. Then why was she afraid of him? She wasn't. Abby's eyes were hard. Those letters, they're lies, or half-truths twisted to serve Catherine's purpose. She wanted Webb to think she was trapped, wanted him to play the rescuer. It was a game to her. Eva's breath caught. How do you know? Because I was there. I heard them argue. Saw how she looked at Silas when he wasn't watching. Not fear. Contempt. She married him for his money and his land. And when she got bored, she found entertainment elsewhere. But she died. She was murdered. Abby's voice dropped. Not by Silas, by Webb's men. I saw them riding away from Rocky Pass an hour before her carriage went over. Saw them spook those horses on purpose. The room tilted. Eva gripped the edge of the desk. What? Catherine was 8 months pregnant, taking her daily carriage ride. Someone fired a rifle into the air near the horses. They bolted. Carriage flipped. She died on impact. The baby Samuel lived for an hour. Abby's voice cracked. Silas held him while he died, sang to him. And when it was over, something in Silas died too. Why would Webb kill her if he loved her? Because she was pregnant with Silas's child. Because she'd chosen to stay after all. Because Webb realized he'd never have her or the land, so if he couldn't have either, neither could Silas. Abby stood, placed the letters back in the box. Webb wanted Silas destroyed. Grief-stricken men make mistakes. Sell land cheap. Give up. The sheriff is in Webb's pocket. Always has been. The investigation was closed in 3 days. Accident, they said. No evidence to suggest otherwise. Eva felt sick. And those letters, Webb probably gave them to Catherine to write. Insurance. Or maybe she wrote them willingly. I don't know. But they're not the whole truth, and they sure as hell aren't evidence of Silas's guilt. Abby walked to the door, paused. You want to know who Silas really is? He's a man who loved a woman who didn't love him back, who lost his son before the boy ever had a chance to live, who gets up every morning and works himself to death because it's the only thing that keeps the pain at bay. That's the man you married. She left Eva alone with the box of lies and the weight of her mistake. Silas didn't come to dinner that night, or breakfast the next morning. Eva saw him from her window, working with the horses, fixing fence, doing anything to avoid the house, avoiding her. On the 3rd day, she'd had enough. She found him in the barn at dawn mucking out stools. Hard, dirty work he usually left to the hands. We need to talk. He didn't look up. I'm busy. I know about Webb, about the murder, about what really happened to Catherine. The pitchfork stilled. Abby tell you? Yes. Then you know I didn't kill my wife. Congratulations. You can stop looking at me like I'm a monster. Eva stepped into the stall. He was covered in sweat and dirt and pain. I never thought you were a monster. You read those letters and asked if I hurt her. That's the same thing. I was confused, scared. Webb planted doubt and I let it grow. I'm sorry. Silas finally looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed. He hadn't been sleeping. You want to know the worst part? I knew Catherine didn't love me. Knew it from the first month. But I thought if I gave her everything, the house, the security, my name, maybe she'd change. Maybe she'd learn to care. Silas, she didn't. She took everything I offered and gave nothing back except lies and contempt. And I stayed because I was too proud to admit I'd been a fool. He turned away, voice breaking. And when she died, I felt relief. For 1 second before I knew about Samuel, I felt relief that she was gone. What kind of man does that make me? Human. Eva moved closer. It makes you human. I don't deserve. Stop. She grabbed his arm, forced him to face her. Stop telling me what you deserve. Catherine used you. Webb killed her. You lost everything, but you're still here. Still fighting. That's not weakness, that's strength. Why are you defending me? I bought you like I bought her. This contract, the contract is paper. What we build is real. Eva's voice was fierce. I'm not Catherine. I didn't come here for your money or your land. I came because I had nowhere else to go. But I'm staying because I choose to. Why? Because you defended me when I burned dinner. Because you taught me to ride even when I fell 6 times. Because you covered me with a blanket when I fell asleep in your room. She stepped closer. Because you're a good man who's been hurt, and I'm tired of watching you bleed alone. Silas stared at her. Something shifted in his face. The walls he'd built so carefully started to crack. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. How to let someone in. Then we'll figure it out together. He pulled her into his arms, not gently, desperately, like a drowning man grabbing a rope. Eva held him while he shook, while 3 years of grief poured out in silence. When they finally pulled apart, the sun was higher, the barn was warm, and something between them had fundamentally changed. Thank you, he said. For what? For staying when you had every reason to leave. Eva touched his face. I'm not going anywhere. That night, Silas knocked on her door. When she opened it, he stood in the hallway holding a key. What's this? The locked room, at the end of the hall. His voice was rough. I want you to see it. With me. Are you sure? No. But I'm tired of keeping you out. They walked to the door Eva had tried weeks ago. The blood stain on the handle was still there, faded but visible. Silas unlocked it. The hinges screamed. Inside, dust hung in the air like suspended time. A crib stood in the corner, a rocking chair, carved wooden toys on a shelf, and the walls were covered in sketches, pencil drawings of a future that never came. A boy learning to ride, a family at dinner, a father teaching his son to rope cattle. Years of hope rendered in graphite. Eva's throat closed. Silas, I built this when Catherine was 6 months pregnant. Spent every evening sketching what our life would be, what Samuel would look like, what we'd do together. He walked to the crib, ran his hand over the wood. He lived for an hour. I held him right here. He was so small. And then he was gone. I locked this room because I couldn't bear to look at it. Couldn't destroy it either. It's all I have left of him. Eva walked to the wall, studied the drawings. They were good, detailed. Each one a love letter to a child who never got to grow up. You'll have another chance, she said quietly. We'll have this family, Silas, not because of a contract, because we both want it. He looked at her, really looked. You mean that? I do. Silas pulled her close, kissed her forehead. You're too good for me. You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you don't listen. For the first time since she'd known him, Silas laughed. A real laugh. Small but genuine. They left the room together. This time the door stayed unlocked. The peace lasted 3 weeks. Eva woke in early May to the smell of smoke. Not wood smoke. Not cooking. This was acrid. Wrong. She ran to the window. The barn was on fire. Silas! She threw on her robe and ran downstairs. Silas was already outside shouting orders. Ranch hands scrambled with buckets. The horses screamed. Get the horses out. Silas ran into the burning barn. Silas, no. He disappeared into the smoke. Eva's heart stopped. She started forward, but Abby grabbed her arm. You can't help. You'll just get in the way. One by one, the hands led horses out, panicked, wild-eyed, but alive. Finally, Silas emerged, coughing, covered in soot. He saw Eva and his face flooded with relief. Then the gunshot cracked the air. Silas went down. Eva screamed, ran to him. He was clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. From the tree line, 6 riders emerged, armed, dangerous, and at their head, Thornton Webb. Good morning, Mrs. Ashford. Webb's voice was pleasant, conversational. Terribly sorry about the barn. Accidents happen. Silas tried to stand. Couldn't. Get off my land. Your land. Webb smiled. Funny thing about land. It only belongs to people who can defend it. And you're not in much position to defend anything right now. What do you want? Eva's voice shook. What I've always wanted, this ranch and revenge. Webb's face twisted. Catherine should have been mine. This land should have been mine. Silas took everything from me. Now, I'm taking it back. Catherine chose him. Eva helped Silas to his feet. Blood soaked his shirt. She stayed, only because she was pregnant with his bastard. Webb's composure cracked. She promised me. Promised we'd run away together. Then she got pregnant and suddenly it was all, I can't leave him now. He's the father of my child. As if that mattered. So you killed her. Silas's voice was weak but clear. You killed them both. I freed her from a loveless marriage. It's not my fault the child died too. The admission hung in the air. You're insane, Eva whispered. I'm practical. Webb gestured to his men. Burn the house. Leave nothing standing. No. Eva moved in front of Silas. One of Webb's men raised his rifle, pointed it at her. The shot rang out, but it didn't come from Webb's man. Caleb Winters stood on the porch, old rifle smoking. Webb's man fell from his horse, screaming, clutching his leg. That's far enough, Caleb said calmly. Next one goes through your heart, not your leg. More movement. Cole and the other ranch hands appeared armed. Webb's remaining men shifted nervously. They were hired guns, not martyrs. You want a war, Webb? Silas's voice was gaining strength. Here's your war. For a long moment, no one moved. Then hoofbeats thundered from the road. A group of riders, townspeople, Eva realized, led by Reverend Crane. Stand down, Webb. The Reverend's voice was iron. This ends now. Webb looked around, saw he was outnumbered. His face purpled with rage. This isn't over, Ashford. Yes, said a new voice. It is. A sheriff rode up, not the corrupt one Eva had heard about, but a different man. Older. Harder. This was the new sheriff appointed last month after the old one had been run out of town for corruption. Thornton Webb, you're under arrest for arson, attempted murder, and the murder of Catherine Ashford 3 years ago. Webb laughed. A brittle, broken sound. You have no proof. Your confession, the sheriff started, was hyperbole, Webb cut in. Taunting. Any lawyer will argue that. "We have a witness." The sheriff gestured. "Caleb Winters saw your men at Rocky Pass the day Catherine died. He's ready to testify." "You said you wouldn't," Eva whispered to Caleb. "I said I wouldn't testify when Webb owned the county," Caleb replied. "He doesn't anymore. New sheriff, new rules." Webb's men abandoned him, rode off without looking back. Webb sat alone on his horse, surrounded by people he'd terrorized for years. "This should have been mine," he said quietly. "All of it." "Nothing was ever yours, Webb." Silas's voice was tired. "You just couldn't accept it." They took Webb away in chains. The danger was over, but Silas was bleeding badly. Doc Harrison, who'd ridden with the townspeople, examined him quickly. "Bullets still in there. I need to operate. Now." They carried Silas into the house. Eva followed numb. The next hours passed in a blur. Whiskey for sterilization. Silas's screams as the doctor dug out the bullet. Abby holding Eva back when she tried to help. Finally, Doc emerged. "He'll live. Lost a lot of blood, but he's strong." Eva nearly collapsed with relief. She sat by Silas's bedside for 3 days. Changed his bandages, forced broth down his throat. Talked to him when he was delirious with fever. Telling him stories about Boston, about her parents, about the future they'd build. On the 4th day, he woke clear-eyed. "Evangeline, I'm here. The ranch is fine. Barn's damaged but fixable. Stock is safe. Caleb's running things." She pressed a cool cloth to his forehead. "You need to rest." "Can't rest. Too much work." "The work will wait." She leaned close. "You almost died, Silas. The ranch doesn't matter if you're not here." He caught her hand. "I'm sorry for putting you in danger. Webb was my past, and I let it poison our present. Webb is in jail awaiting trial. The past is buried. We're free." Something in his face softened. We, Eva confirmed. He pulled her down into a kiss, gentle, grateful, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Eva had something to tell him, something she'd known for over a week, but hadn't found the right moment for. "Silas, I'm pregnant." He went very still. "What?" "About 6 weeks, I think. I'd been feeling unwell for over a week, morning sickness, exhaustion. While you were sleeping off the fever yesterday, I asked Doc to examine me. He confirmed it." His hand moved to her stomach, still flat. No sign yet of the life growing there. "You're certain?" "Doc says so, and I feel different. I know it sounds strange, but I can feel it." Tears filled his eyes. "Evangeline, I know it's what the contract required, but that's not why I'm happy about it. I'm happy because it's yours. Ours." He pulled her into his arms, held her like she might disappear. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me another chance." "We're giving each other a chance." Summer passed into autumn. Silas healed. The barn was rebuilt. Webb's trial resulted in a hanging sentence. Eva's pregnancy progressed. She grew round and radiant. Silas was terrified and tender in equal measure. He read every book on childbirth he could find, built a new crib, refused to let her lift anything heavier than a spoon. I'm pregnant, not made of glass. You're carrying my child. That makes you made of something far more precious. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Eva was sick constantly in the early months. Then came the backaches, the swollen feet, the exhaustion. But Silas was there, every step. December arrived cold and clear. Eva went into labor 3 days before Christmas. It was long, brutal. 20 hours of pain that felt endless. Silas paced outside the bedroom like a caged animal while Abby and Doc Harrison worked. When Eva screamed, he broke, burst through the door despite Abby's protests. "Get out, this is no place for—" "I'm not leaving her." Silas took Eva's hand. "I'm right here, darling. I'm not going anywhere." Eva gripped his hand hard enough to leave bruises. "It hurts. I know. You're so strong. You're so brave." Hour 23. Eva began to fade. Her face went gray. Her grip loosened. "She's losing too much blood," Doc said grimly. "I might have to choose." "Choose what?" Silas's voice was sharp. "The baby's positioned wrong. If I don't intervene, we'll lose them both. But the procedure, it's risky for the mother. Save my wife." Silas didn't hesitate. "I don't care about anything else. Save Evangeline." "Silas." Eva's voice was weak. "The heir. The contract." "Fuck the contract." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You're what matters. Only you. Do you hear me? I choose you. Always you." Doc worked quickly, frantically. And finally, after an eternity, a baby's cry split the air. "It's a girl," Doc announced. "A healthy baby girl." The room went silent. Silas took the tiny bloody bundle in his arms, looked down at the small face, the shock of dark hair, the perfect fingers grasping at air. A girl. Not the son the contract required. Not the heir he'd been so desperate for. Eva watched his face, exhausted and terrified, waiting for disappointment, for anger. Instead, Silas started to cry. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's absolutely perfect." He brought the baby to Eva, placed their daughter in her arms. "I'm sorry," Eva said. "I know you wanted. I wanted you both alive. I got that. Everything else is details." But Eva saw the flicker, just for a moment, the shadow of grief for Samuel, for the son he'd lost, for the legacy he'd thought he needed. It passed quickly, replaced by wonder as he watched his daughter yawn. But Eva had seen it, and it made her love him more, not less, because he was honest. Even in his joy, he acknowledged his pain. "What should we name her?" Eva asked. Silas was quiet for a long moment. Catherine always wanted to name a daughter Hope, said it was what kept her going through hard times. Eva's breath caught. "You'd name her after Catherine?" "No." Silas touched the baby's cheek with infinite gentleness. "I'd name her after what Catherine couldn't give me. What you did. Hope for the future. Hope that love can grow from dark beginnings. Hope that broken things can heal. Hope Evangeline Ashford. Perfect." They sat together as the sun rose. Silas, Eva, and baby Hope. A family built from a contract, but bound by something stronger. 2 days later, on Christmas morning, Abby brought breakfast to the bedroom where Eva was recovering. She found them asleep. Silas propped against the headboard, Eva against his shoulder, Hope nestled between them. The Irish woman smiled, crossed herself, whispered a prayer of thanksgiving. When they woke, Silas carried Hope to the window. "You weren't what I expected, little one," he murmured. "I thought I needed a son to carry my name, to inherit all this. But a name is just letters. This ranch is just dirt and grass. What matters is love. And that you've got in abundance." Eva joined them, the three of them looking out at the winter landscape. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "The contract. Everything that brought us here." Silas was quiet. "I regret that I couldn't see past my pain, that I tried to replace what I'd lost instead of building something new. I regret the coldness, the distance, the walls I built. But the train ticket I sent to a woman from Boston who had nowhere else to go. The fact that she turned out to be stubborn and brave enough to fight for a broken man she barely knew." He looked at Eva. Really looked. "No, I don't regret that at all." Eva laughed. Hope made a small sound against Silas's chest. "She's hungry," Eva said. They settled into the rocking chair. Eva nursed while Silas watched, still marveling at the fact of them. His family. Not the fantasy he'd sketched on nursery walls, but something better. Something earned. Outside, snow began to fall. "What do you think she'll be?" Eva mused. "When she grows up, strong, like you. Stubborn, like you. God help us both." Silas smiled. "But whatever she becomes, she'll know she was wanted, loved. That matters more than any name or title." Eva looked up at him. "You really mean that?" "I really do." He kissed her forehead. "You taught me that partnership isn't ownership. That love grows better in honesty than in fantasy. That sometimes the best things come from the darkest bargains." Hope finished eating. Silas took her, held her against his shoulder with practiced care. Eva stood, wrapped her arms around both of them. "I love you, Silas Ashford. I didn't expect to. The contract certainly didn't require it, but I do. I love you too, Evangeline Ashford. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. You're saying it now. That's what matters." They stood as the snow fell and Christmas morning brightened. Three people who'd found each other through desperation and built something beautiful from it. The contract that had brought them together was still legally binding. Eva still had 2.5 years before it expired. But neither of them cared anymore. They'd found something the contract could never account for. Something that couldn't be written in legalese or enforced by law. They'd found each other. And in finding each other, they'd found home. Years later, people in Redemption would tell the story of Silas Ashford and his mail-order bride. How she came from Boston with nothing. How he married her for an heir and got a daughter instead. How their marriage started as a transaction and became something else entirely. Some called it a love story. Others called it survival. But Eva and Silas knew the truth. It was a woman choosing to fight when she could have run. A man learning to open his heart after it had been broken. two lonely people finding light in each other's darkness. It was a contract that became a covenant. And it was a daughter named Hope who would grow up knowing that sometimes the darkest beginnings lead to the brightest futures. They called it the darkest bargain ever struck in the Texas Hill Country. But in the end, it saved them both.